What? Summer's expression turned icy. If you're done, get out of my sight. Margaret scoffed, still pretending to be the Stewart family's daughter. She lifted her hand, showing off the necklace around her neck, a six-pointed star-shaped diamond pendant. Smirking, she asked, "Recognize this?" Summer's fingers froze around her fork. She slowly put the cake down. The only person in the Stewart family who had ever genuinely loved her was her grandmother. But only a year after Summer returned, she had passed away. That had been one of the greatest pains of her life. Before her death, her grandmother had left behind two heirlooms. One was a pair of jade earrings, the other, a six-pointed diamond necklace. By Stewart family tradition, the jade earrings were for the family's sons, while the diamond necklace was always passed down to the Stewart family's daughter. On Margaret's 18th birthday, the family had gifted the necklace to her. But before passing away, Summer's grandmother had explicitly stated that the necklace must be restored to Summer. Summer had assumed Julia had taken it back, but simply refused to give it to her. Yet here it was, still hanging around Margaret's neck. A sharp pain shot through her chest. Margaret saw the flicker of sadness in Summer's eyes and felt a rush of satisfaction. "Smirking," she said, "this necklace has stayed with me all these years. That just proves who our parents really consider their daughter." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "And you're nothing." Then, a sharp, ear-piercing scream shattered the air. Just as Margaret was basking in her own self-satisfaction, Summer suddenly took a step forward. With one swift motion, she yanked the six-pointed diamond necklace straight off Margaret's neck. Margaret barely had time to react. All she felt was a sharp, burning pain as the chain was forcibly torn away, scraping across her delicate skin. Ugh. The sting was instant. A thin line of blood surfaced on her neck. The commotion immediately drew the attention of the entire banquet hall. Curious onlookers turned their heads, eager for gossip. Julia rushed over in a panic. "What is going on?" Margaret, her face streaked with tears, threw herself into Julia's arms. "Mom, Summer was speaking to you so disrespectfully, so I told her not to act like that, and she just lost it. She ripped my necklace off. My neck, she almost broke my neck." Julia's gaze snapped to the bloodstains on Margaret's skin, then to Summer, her expression darkening. "Summer, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Summer met her glare calmly. Raising the necklace for all to see, she slowly turned it between her fingers. The six-pointed diamond sparkled brilliantly under the grand chandelier, sharp, intricate, undeniably valuable. Summer's tone was lazy, unhurried. "I was just taking back the necklace my grandmother left for me. No need for all this fuss, is there?" Julia's eyes flickered. She had been so busy tonight that she hadn't even noticed Margaret was wearing the necklace. If she had seen it earlier, she wouldn't have allowed it. When Madame Stanton passed away, Julia had tried to retrieve the necklace from Margaret. She had even offered to exchange it for jewelry of equal value. But the moment she brought it up, Margaret burst into tears, sobbing about how she wasn't loved anymore. Ever since Summer returned, Margaret had grown sensitive. Julia had spent 20 years raising her. How could she bear to break her heart? So in the end, she let it go. She figured she could always buy Summer another diamond necklace. That way, both daughters would be happy. Julia pursed her lips. This necklace was given to Margaret when she turned 18. At the time, you weren't part of the Stewart family yet. You can't blame anyone for that. Summer let out a laugh, mocking, razor-sharp. "You really do dote on your fake daughter. What, aren't you afraid Grandma will crawl out of her grave to make you pay for it?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Fake daughter. The words hit like a slap. Coming from Summer, it was an outright declaration of war. Margaret snapped. The burning pain on her neck was nothing compared to the humiliation searing through her chest. Her hands clenched into tight fists. She wanted to scratch that smug look right off Summer's face. Julia's expression turned ugly. Her voice dropped into a sharp hiss. Summer, enough. If you had never returned to the Stewart family, this necklace would have always been Margaret's. Summer's lips curled in amusement, but the smile never reached her eyes. That's right. If I had never come back, everything would still belong to Margaret. They never really wanted me back in the first place. Jasper had been busy entertaining guests in the main hall. But the escalating noise from the banquet floor finally forced him to step in. The moment he saw what was happening, Margaret in tears, the guests whispering, the mess his daughters were making, his expression darkened. This was embarrassing. His voice was stern. Enough! Stop causing a scene. We're making a laughingstock of ourselves. We'll discuss the necklace later. Margaret, go see the family doctor for your neck. Margaret's eyes filled with fresh tears. Her voice trembled. Dad, Summer attacked me, and now you're taking her side. To Jasper, this was just a petty argument between siblings. Nothing worth ruining the Stewart group's 30th anniversary over. All he cared about was resolving this before it damaged the family's reputation. His gaze shifted to Summer. Summer, return the necklace to Margaret. We'll sort this out after the banquet. A wave of hushed murmurs spread through the room. Some people looked at Summer with sympathy, others with ridicule. Summer stared at the scene in front of her. Julia, arms wrapped protectively around Margaret. Jasper, standing firm in his defense of her. They looked like a perfectly loving family. And she. She was the unwanted outsider, the villain disrupting their peace. She bit down hard, forcing back the sting in her nose. This necklace belongs to the Stewart family's real daughter. Why should she give it back? The voice was cold, firm, carrying a subtle edge of anger. Every head in the room turned toward the source. The next moment, Summer was pulled into a familiar embrace. She looked up. Trevor. His sharp jawline, his emotionless expression. Summer's brows knitted together. She immediately pushed him away. Trevor was dressed in a crisp gray suit, his tie meticulously straightened. His entire presence was precise, composed, and impossibly distant. But the moment he had spoken, the air in the room shifted. A powerful, oppressive aura blanketed the hall. Jasper's eyes flickered. The Larson family's wealth far surpassed the Stewart family's. To him, it didn't really matter which daughter got the necklace. But if Trevor was backing Summer, then giving it to her would be more beneficial. He immediately forced a smile, trying to smooth things over. Trevor, don't mind this little argument between my daughters. The necklace has always belonged to the Stewart family's daughter, so of course, it rightfully belongs to Summer. Margaret's heart plummeted. Jasper's tone had changed. His stance had shifted. Trevor had barely said anything, and just like that, her parents were no longer defending her. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to Julia for support. Julia understood her silent plea. But Summer was Trevor's fiancée. And the Stewart family's business relied heavily on the Larson family. Even though Julia adored Margaret, even though she was furious at Summer's behavior, at this moment, there was no way she would go against Trevor. She sighed and gently patted Margaret's shoulder before letting go. Turning to Trevor, she forced a warm smile. Trevor, you're late. Then she addressed Margaret directly. Margaret, your sister Summer is getting married soon. The necklace will be her dowry. When you get married, I'll buy you a new one." Margaret froze. Her mind reeled. Everything had turned against her in an instant. Jasper and Julia had switched sides just because Trevor had shown up. Her neck was still bleeding. But suddenly, no one seemed to care. Mocking eyes swept over her. She could feel their judgment, their silent laughter. Her face burned. Overwhelmed with humiliation and rage, she clenched her fists, then stomped her foot in frustration and ran from the room. Margaret ran upstairs to her room. She grabbed everything within reach and hurled it across the room, one by one. Outside the bedroom, the crashing and smashing sounds were so loud they could be heard through the closed door. Zoe, along with the family doctor, stood waiting outside. She had been working for the Stewart family for over 20 years, essentially serving as their housekeeper. She had watched Margaret grow up spoiled, arrogant, and impossible to discipline. Back when she was the Stewart family's rightful daughter, it was understandable why everyone indulged her. But now that she had been exposed as an imposter, she was still just as entitled, if not worse, behind closed doors. Zoe couldn't understand why Summer's parents insisted on keeping Margaret in the family. Miss Summer was 100 times better than her. By the time Margaret had smashed everything in sight, the humiliation from earlier had finally eased a little. "All right, Summer, tonight you only won because Trevor was on your side. That's the only reason Mom and Dad favored you. Since Trevor is your biggest support, the man you love the most, I'll make sure he leaves you. I want you to suffer." Margaret pulled out her phone, scrolling to Peyton's WhatsApp chat. A wicked smile spread across her lips. She and Peyton weren't exactly friends, but they had a common enemy. She had visited Peyton at the hospital once. The two of them hit it off instantly and exchanged contact information, knowing they could be useful to each other one day. After sending the message, Margaret finally felt better. She opened the door and let the doctor in to treat her neck wound. There was a good show waiting to unfold. After the earlier commotion, Jasper ordered the staff to change the music to a waltz, signaling the guests to resume enjoying the evening. Julia was still frustrated with Summer's attitude over the diamond necklace, but seeing how Trevor had defended her, she swallowed her anger. As Mrs. Stewart, she had lived a life of luxury and privilege for decades. The Stewart family's wealth and status mattered to her. And no matter how difficult Summer was, she was still her biological daughter. If Summer married Trevor, it would secure the Stewart family's connection to the powerful Larson family. Julia believed she had to strike while the iron was hot. Just as she was about to bring up setting a wedding date, Summer abruptly grabbed Trevor and dragged him outside. Julia was speechless. "Ungrateful girl, can't you see I'm doing this for your own good?" By the pool outside the villa, Summer put distance between herself and Trevor. Arms crossed, her gaze was sharp and ice cold. "What are you doing here?" Trevor stared at her intently. Her makeup was flawless. Her long, wavy hair gleamed under the lights, and her one-shoulder black dress hugged her figure perfectly. She rarely dressed so boldly, and he had to admit it suited her. But then he remembered the call she hadn't answered. Summer had never ignored his calls before. She used to pick up within 3 seconds, every time. His voice dropped a little. "Why was your phone off?" A cold smirk tugged at Summer's lips. "You didn't care if I lived or died, but now you care about my phone." She continued, her voice slow and deliberate. "Let me remind you, Trevor, on the day I was kidnapped, while you were holding a wedding for Peyton, we broke up." Trevor frowned. He didn't like hearing the word break up from her mouth.